My parents work at a credit union preaching financial responsibility, but demanded I give my $800,000 inheritance to my unemployed DJ brother. Hey friends! Got a sec? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe. It's quick for you, but it really means a lot to us. Alright, let's dive into today's story. Original post. I never thought I'd be writing here, but I need perspective from people who aren't emotionally invested in my family dynamics. I'm a 27-year-old dental hygienist, and I'm facing pressure from my parents to give away my inheritance to my younger brother. 6 months ago, my grandmother passed away. She was my father's mother, but she and I had a special bond. When I was young, she'd take me to her townhouse in the older part of the city every weekend. She taught me to bake, helped me with homework, and most importantly, she listened. When I struggled to pay for dental hygiene school, she quietly covered my textbooks and supplies, never asking for anything in return. In her will, she left me her townhouse. It's a modest 3-bedroom place in a neighborhood that's recently started gentrifying. The property needs work, the kitchen hasn't been updated since the 1980s, and the roof needs replacing soon. But it's mine, and it represents everything my grandmother wanted for me: stability and independence. Here's where things get complicated. My parents both work at a local credit union. My father as a branch manager and my mother as a senior loan officer. They're well respected in their professional community, always talking about financial responsibility and smart money management at work. But at home, the story is different, especially when it comes to my 25-year-old brother. My brother is a part-time DJ who works maybe 2 gigs a month. He lives with our parents, doesn't pay rent, and spends most of his time networking and building his brand. My parents fully support this, calling him an artist who needs time to develop his craft. They've been bankrolling his equipment purchases, his car payments, and even his weekly nights out, connecting with the music scene. When the will was read, my parents seemed shocked that the townhouse went to me. My father kept saying, "Mom must have been confused near the end," even though the will was drafted 2 years before she passed. My mother started immediately talking about how family helps family, and how I already have a stable job while my brother is still finding his path. The pressure started subtly. Comments at family dinners about how hard it is for artists to get established. Stories about how my brother had been looking at studio spaces but couldn't afford them. Then it escalated. Last week, they sat me down for a family meeting. They laid out their plan. I should sign the townhouse over to my brother. He could live in it, use the basement as a studio, and rent out the other bedrooms to cover expenses. They argued that as a dental hygienist, I make good money. I make $65,000 a year in a high cost of living area, while my brother needs this break to launch his career. My mother actually said, "You can afford rent somewhere else. He can't." When I hesitated, the guilt-tripping intensified. My father reminded me of all the times they'd helped me growing up, conveniently forgetting that my grandmother paid for most of my education expenses. My mother cried, saying she couldn't believe I'd be so selfish with family. They even brought my brother into it, who sat there looking hopeful, talking about his vision for turning the space into a creative hub. I tried explaining that I'm not wealthy. After taxes, student loans for my prerequisites, car payments, and current rent, I save maybe $500 a month if I'm careful. The townhouse, even needing repairs, would mean I could finally stop renting and build equity. But they wouldn't hear it. To them, my stable job means I'm set for life, while my brother's artistic temperament means he needs extra support. The situation exploded yesterday when I told them I needed time to think. My father accused me of being materialistic and forgetting family values. My mother posted a passive-aggressive Facebook status about children who forget where they came from. My brother texted me a long message about how I'm crushing his dreams and how my grandmother would be disappointed in my selfishness. Here's what kills me. These are the same parents who lecture their credit union clients about financial planning and not enabling adult children. I've heard them come home and talk about denying loans to parents who wanted to bail out their kids again. Yet here they are, demanding I give away my only asset to subsidize my brother's refusal to get a real job. I feel torn between guilt and anger. Part of me wonders if I am being selfish. Maybe family should come first. Maybe I should help my brother. But another part of me is furious that they're trying to take away what my grandmother specifically left to me. She could have left it to my brother if she'd wanted to. She didn't. What would you do in my situation? Update 1, 2 weeks later. Thank you to everyone who responded to my original post. Your perspectives gave me the clarity and courage I needed. I have an update that I'm sure will be controversial, but I need to share what happened. After reading your comments, I realized something important. My parents weren't going to stop. The pressure would continue, the guilt-tripping would escalate, and eventually, they'd wear me down or make my life so miserable that I'd give in just for peace. I also realized that I was under no obligation to keep the townhouse in the family or preserve it as some kind of shrine to my grandmother's memory. I quietly contacted 3 real estate agents and got the property appraised. What I discovered shocked me. The neighborhood had gentrified more than I'd realized. Developers were buying up properties left and right. The townhouse, despite needing repairs, was sitting on a prime lot in an area zoned for multi-unit development. The highest offer came from a developer who specializes in luxury condos, $800,000 cash, quick close, as is condition. I spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about it. This was my grandmother's home, filled with memories. But I also remembered something she used to tell me: property is just walls and a roof, sweetheart. What matters is what you build with your life. I accepted the offer. The closing happened fast, within 2 weeks. I didn't tell my family until the day after I'd signed the papers and received the wire transfer. I knew if I'd told them earlier, they would have found a way to interfere, maybe even shown up at the closing to cause a scene. I'll never forget the family dinner where I announced it. I waited until dessert, then calmly stated that I'd sold the townhouse. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before the explosion. My mother screamed. Actually screamed. "You did what? How could you sell your grandmother's house without discussing it with us?" My father's face went from red to purple. "That was supposed to stay in the family. It was supposed to go to your brother." "Supposed to?" I responded. "According to whom? Grandmother left it to me. If she'd wanted it to go to him, she would have left it to him." My brother jumped up from the table, knocking over his water glass. "You sold my studio, my future, for what money? You're nothing but a greedy, heartless." "I sold my property," I interrupted. "The property my grandmother left to me. And yes, for money. For my future." The revelations that followed were even worse. My parents had apparently already told their co-workers that their son was about to become a property owner and entrepreneur. My mother had been bragging about how their DJ son was opening his own studio space. My father had been telling people about how the family was coming together to support the next generation of artists. When they found out about the $800,000, the dynamic shifted slightly but became even more toxic. Suddenly, it wasn't just about giving my brother the house. It was about sharing the money. My father immediately started calculating, "Even after taxes, you'll have at least $600,000. Surely you can give your brother half. That's more than fair." Fair. I worked my entire adult life to build my career while my brother played video games and occasionally DJ'd at empty coffee shops. I went to school, studied, took board exams, and worked with my hands in people's mouths all day while he sleeps until noon. And somehow, giving him half of my inheritance is fair. My mother tried a different approach, tears streaming down her face. "We raised you both equally. We gave you the same love, the same opportunities. How can you do this to your brother? To us? The same opportunities?" I couldn't help but laugh. I worked 2 jobs through school while he got a free ride living at home. I've been paying my own bills since I was 18 while you still pay his phone bill. How is that the same? The dinner ended with my father telling me I was no longer welcome in their home until I came to my senses, and my brother calling me a sellout capitalist who destroyed his dreams. The irony of being called a capitalist by someone who wanted to be handed free property wasn't lost on me. The next day, I went to see where my grandmother's townhouse had been. The developer had already begun demolition. As I watched the excavator tear through the walls where I'd spent so many happy hours, I felt sad but not regretful. Those memories are mine to keep. The house was just bricks and mortar, and now it was $800,000 in my bank account, my chance at a real future. I've since learned that my parents have been telling everyone I'm a heartless daughter who sold out her family for money. They're conveniently leaving out the part where they tried to pressure me into giving away my inheritance. I'm sure their version of events paints them as loving parents just trying to help their struggling artist son while their greedy daughter chose money over family. I've been staying in an extended stay hotel while I figure out my next steps. I've hired a financial advisor and a tax attorney. After all taxes and fees, I'll have about $600,000. It's more money than I ever imagined having, and I want to be smart about it. The guilt comes in waves. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just kept the townhouse, lived in it myself, and found a way to make peace with my family. Other times, I'm angry that they've made me feel guilty for keeping what was rightfully mine. I know this isn't the update some of you hoped for. You probably wanted me to stand strong, keep the townhouse, and live there happily while maintaining boundaries with my family. But that wasn't realistic for me. The pressure would have never stopped, and living in that house while being estranged from my family would have tainted every memory I had of my grandmother. At least this way, I have a clean break and the resources to build the life my grandmother wanted for me, one of independence and stability. Update 2, 6 weeks after sale. The fallout continues, but in ways I didn't expect. I need to share what's been happening because it validates every decision I made, even though the situation has become more complex. First, about my brother. After the initial explosion, he apparently spent 2 weeks telling anyone who would listen that I destroyed his life. He posted constantly on social media about how family betrayal was fueling his new music, sharing memes about fake people and greed. He announced he was working on a mixtape called Blood Isn't Everything, and started a GoFundMe for his studio equipment that raised a grand total of $47, all from our mother's church friends. But here's where it gets interesting. One of his DJ friends actually offered him a real opportunity, a regular Friday night slot at a decent club downtown. It would have paid $300 per night plus tips. My brother turned it down because it was too commercial and would compromise his artistic integrity. My parents defended this decision, saying he shouldn't have to sell out his vision for money. The same parents who work at a credit union and preach financial responsibility. About my parents and their workplace situation. Remember how they'd been bragging to their co-workers about their son becoming a property owner? Well, the truth came out in the most embarrassing way possible. A co-worker of my father's happens to live near where my grandmother's townhouse was. She drove by and saw it being demolished, with a big sign announcing, "Coming soon, luxury condos by Meridian Development." She innocently asked my father about it at work, in front of several other employees. "I thought your son was opening a studio there. Why is it being demolished?" My father apparently tried to save face by saying plans had changed, but people started asking questions. The story gradually came out, helped along by my brother's public social media meltdowns, that I'd inherited the property and sold it instead of giving it to him. Here's the thing about working at a credit union in a small city: reputation matters. My parents had spent years building their image as financial advisors who practiced what they preached. They'd literally given seminars on teaching financial independence to adult children and breaking the cycle of enabling. Their co-workers started connecting the dots. The same couple who advised clients against enabling their adult children were supporting a 25-year-old who refused to work. The same advisors who preached about smart financial planning were pressuring one child to give away an $800,000 asset to another child who had no income or business plan. The workplace dynamics shifted subtly but noticeably. My mother told her sister that she's been excluded from lunch groups. My father was passed over for leading the annual financial literacy workshop, a role he'd held for 5 years. Their professional reputation as financial advisors was undermined by their personal hypocrisy. Meanwhile, I found and purchased a condo. Not a luxury penthouse, a sensible 2-bedroom in a secure building with good resale value. I paid $340,000 cash, no mortgage. The feeling of owning something outright, with no bank involved, is indescribable. I wake up every morning in MY home, bought with MY inheritance, and feel nothing but peace. I also did something that I think would have made my grandmother proud. I donated $100,000 to establish a fund at the dental school where I trained. It provides free dental care to underprivileged children and offers scholarships to hygienist students from low-income families. They named it after my grandmother. When my parents found out about the donation through a mutual friend who saw the announcement on the school's website, they lost their minds. My mother called me from a blocked number, I'd stopped taking their calls, and left a voicemail screaming that I'd rather give money to strangers than help my own brother. She actually said, "That money could have set him up for life." No, Mom. That money could have enabled him for life. There's a difference. My brother, meanwhile, has escalated his victim narrative. He's been telling people I stole his inheritance, conveniently leaving out that he was never mentioned in the will. He's also been hinting that my grandmother wasn't in her right mind when she made the will, which is particularly disgusting considering she was sharp as a tack until the day she died. But karma has a way of working things out. Last week, my brother posted another rant about me on Facebook, calling me a sellout, and tagged several local music venues. One venue owner responded publicly, "Didn't you turn down a paying gig at my club because it wasn't artistic enough? Maybe focus less on inheritance and more on actually working." The comment got over 200 likes before my brother deleted the entire post. Final update, 3 months after sale. I wasn't planning to update again, but I feel like I need to share how this all resolved, because the ending is something I never could have predicted. My brother is still living in my parents' garage. Not even the main house anymore, the garage. After his social media meltdowns and turning down multiple paying gigs, his reputation in the local DJ scene is shot. The venue owner who called him out publicly? Turns out he's well connected in the music scene. Word spread that my brother is all talk, no work, and expects everything handed to him. His GoFundMe for studio equipment was reported and taken down after someone pointed out he was misrepresenting facts, claiming he'd been cheated out of property he was never entitled to. He now works part-time at a coffee shop, not as a DJ, just making lattes. The same coffee shop where he used to DJ to empty rooms, ironically. My parents' situation has deteriorated further. The credit union conducted an internal review after several clients complained. Apparently, my parents had been giving subtle preferential treatment to certain loan applications, specifically, parents trying to help adult children. Nothing illegal, but definitely against company policy. They'd been approving loans they should have flagged for review, sympathizing too much with enabling parents because they saw themselves in them. They weren't fired, but they were both demoted. My father is no longer a branch manager, just a senior teller. My mother was moved from loan officer to customer service. The pay cuts were significant, about 30% for each of them. They're now making less than I do as a dental hygienist. The beautiful irony. They had to sell their boat, the one they bought 3 years ago and barely used, to cover my brother's credit card debt that they'd been secretly paying. They also had to tell him he needs to start paying rent for the garage or find somewhere else to live. He chose to stay and now pays them $400 a month, which he complains about constantly. But here's the part that really showed me I made the right decision. Last month, I ran into my father's sister at the grocery store. She pulled me aside and told me something I never knew. Apparently, when my grandmother was drafting her will, my parents had tried to convince her to leave the townhouse to my brother. They'd actually driven her to the lawyer's office and sat in the waiting room, thinking their presence would pressure her. My grandmother had walked out, told them she'd changed her mind about updating her will that day, and took an Uber home. She went back alone the next week and specifically instructed the lawyer that the townhouse go to me and only me. She'd also left a letter with the lawyer explaining her decision, which he wasn't required to share but did with my aunt. In it, she wrote that she was leaving it to me because she knew I'd worked hard and would make wise decisions, while my brother had been enabled his whole life and would never learn to stand on his own if people kept catching him every time he was about to fall. She'd seen this coming. She knew exactly what would happen and tried to protect me from beyond the grave. As for me, I'm thriving. My condo is perfect, close enough to work that I can bike on nice days. I've been able to cut my hours to 4 days a week and volunteer at the free dental clinic I helped fund. I'm taking continuing education courses that I could never afford before. I'm even dating someone, a physical therapist who owns his own practice and has never once asked me about my money or suggested I should give him anything. The $100,000 donation to the dental school has already helped provide care to over 200 children. I get updates with pictures of kids smiling with their healthy teeth, and it brings me more joy than that townhouse ever could have. My grandmother's name is on a plaque in the clinic waiting room, and every child who walks through knows that someone named Margaret believed everyone deserves dental care, regardless of income. I haven't spoken to my parents or brother in 2 months. I heard through my aunt that they're telling people I've been brainwashed by money, and that they're praying I'll come back to my senses. They still believe they're the victims in this story. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes, when people show you who they really are, you need to believe them. My parents showed me they valued my brother's comfort over my success. My brother showed me he felt entitled to what I'd earned. And my grandmother? She showed me she believed in me, even when she wasn't here to defend that belief. I don't know if my family relationships will ever recover, and honestly, I'm okay with that uncertainty. I'm building the life my grandmother envisioned for me. Independent, stable, and generous with those who truly need help. The townhouse is gone, replaced by luxury condos that sell for $900,000 each, I'm told. But what I built from its sale, my security, my freedom, my ability to help others, that's permanent. To everyone who told me to stand my ground, thank you. To those who said family isn't always blood, you were right. And to those who said my grandmother knew exactly what she was doing, you were absolutely correct. I sometimes drive by where the townhouse stood. There's a gleaming glass building there now, all modern angles and expensive finishes. It looks nothing like the cozy home where I learned to bake cookies and believe in myself. But when I see it, I don't feel sad. I feel grateful. Grateful that my grandmother's last gift to me wasn't just property. It was the chance to finally see my family clearly and choose my own path. My colleague recently asked me if I regret selling so quickly instead of waiting to see if property values would go higher. I told her no. You can't put a price on peace of mind, and you can't appraise the value of freedom from guilt and manipulation. Besides, I kept the best parts of that house, the memories of my grandmother and the lessons she taught me. Those are worth more than any building could ever be. And unlike property, those can never be demolished, sold, or taken away. The last time I visited my grandmother's grave, I left flowers and a copy of the local newspaper. It had an article about the dental clinic's expansion, funded by the Margaret Thompson Memorial Fund. I like to think she would have smiled, knowing that her townhouse became something bigger, not a studio for my brother to play at being successful, but a real chance for hundreds of children to grow up with healthy smiles and dignity. That's the legacy she wanted. That's the inheritance that actually matters. And that's the family I choose to build. One made of grateful parents, smiling children, and the knowledge that I did the right thing, even when it was the hardest thing. My parents were right about one thing, though: family should help family. They just never understood that sometimes the best help you can give someone is letting them face the consequences of their choices. And sometimes, the family that matters most is the one you create through your actions, not the one you're born into. I'm at peace with my decision. I sleep well in my secure condo, knowing I own it outright. I wake up excited about my work, both paid and volunteer. And I honor my grandmother's memory not by preserving a building, but by living the values she taught me: work hard, stand firm, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for keeping what you've earned. To those facing similar pressure from family, you're not selfish for protecting your assets. You're not cruel for refusing to enable others. And you're definitely not wrong for choosing your own financial security over someone else's refusal to grow up. Trust yourself. Trust the wisdom of those who came before you and left you their legacy for a reason. And never, ever let anyone convince you that their poor planning constitutes your emergency. That's my story. That's my truth. And that's my freedom.